Welcome to Algebra 1, Chapter 8, Section 6, Factoring Trinomials with the first coefficient different than 1. Complete each sentence with the correct form of the word factor. The monomials 12x, 3x squared, and 6x cubed have a common factor of 3x. When factoring a trinomial, begin by looking for a common factor to all three terms. A student factored the expression 12x cubed minus 6x squared into 6x squared times the quantity 2x minus 1. Our vocabulary word is rewrite. Rewrite means to write in another form. Problem number 4. You can rewrite the expression 23x plus 14 plus 3x squared in order to factor it. Now remember, the correct way to write this is with the largest degree first and then alphabetical. In this case, we just want to cross out the expression that's not equivalent. Problem number 5. What words are similar to rewrite? Revise, restate, and change. Number 6. Match column A with column B. If you have any questions, bring them to class tomorrow.
When your leading coefficient is something other than 1, sometimes it's hard to determine what the factors are. One way to do that is to look at the first term's coefficient, in this case is 6, and the last term, in this case a 5, and multiply them together. You get 30. So now we want to look at the factors of 30 that sum to 13. Do you know why the pair negative 3 and 10 are not one of the pairs listed in exercise 8? Because negative 3 times 10 would be a negative 30, and we need a positive 30. Using the 3 and the 10 that we determined would multiply into 30 and add to 13, we see that 13x becomes 3x plus 10x. Now I've purposely put the 3x first because 6x and 3x have a common factor of 3, and x squared and x have a common factor of x. 10x and 5 have a common factor of 5. As you can see, the 2x plus 1 needs to be the same in each of the parentheses. When it is, we can use the distributive property to factor out the greatest common factor. So we end up with our factored form of 6x squared plus 13x plus 5 being the quantity 3x plus 5 times the quantity 2x plus 1. If we rewrote this to 6x squared plus 10x plus 3x plus 5, how would the greatest common factor change? As you could see, we could still factor out. For the 6x squared plus 10x, we would factor out a 2x, and inside the parentheses have 3x plus 5. In the second part, the 3x plus 5, we could not factor anything out except for a 1. So our factor version would be 2x plus 1 times the quantity 3x plus 5. Because of the commutative property, this is the same as 3x plus 5 times the quantity 2x plus 1. What is the factored form of 10x squared plus 31x minus 14? Well, the product AC is negative. The sum B of the factors AC, that's our middle term, is positive. So the factor of AC with the greater absolute value must be positive, and the factor AC of the lesser absolute value must be negative. So we're going to write the factored pairs of AC equals negative 140. That's 10 times negative 14. And then we'll circle the pair factors that sums up to 31. Now we'll use the justifications at the right to factor the expressions. First, we'll rewrite bx. Then we're going to factor the greatest common factor from each pair of terms. And now we'll use a distributive property, and we will check our work. We're going to factor the trinomial 8x squared plus 22x plus 15. To start with, we need to determine the factor pairs of AC. To do that, we need to know what AC is. Well, A is the 8, C is the 15. 8 times 15 is 120. So now let's look at the factor pairs of 120. We need to find the factor pair that sums to our B. Our B is 22, which are factors of 120 that sum to 22, 8 and 15.
So we're going to rewrite our bx, our 22x, as 8x plus 15x. We'll then factor the GCF from each pair of terms, use the distributive property, and then we can determine the dimensions of the rectangle. In this problem, we need to factor 3x squared minus 4x minus 7. Our middle term, our b, needs to be a negative 4. Our AC is 3 times negative 7, which is negative 21. So we need to find some factors of negative 21 whose sum makes negative 4. So we're going to rewrite our negative 4x to include the 3 and negative 7. Looking at each pair, we're going to factor out the greatest common factor. Now, using the distributive property, I can find the factors of my trinomial. In each of the previous trinomials, the terms did not in themselves have a greatest common factor, but occasionally it will happen where they will. In this example, 8x squared minus 36x minus 20 do have a common factor. So our first step is to factor the expression. So we need to factor out the greatest common factor of 8, 36, and 20. And as you see, that's 4. Then we're going to use the 2x squared and the negative 5 to determine that that equals negative 10. We're going to find the factors of negative 10 that have a sum of negative 9. As you see, that's done here. And we work through each problem. The big point I want to make on this slide is that if you have a trinomial where each of the terms have a greatest common factor, you want to factor that out first. Looking at 6x squared minus 2x minus 8, we see that 6, 2, and 8 have a common factor of 2. So I'm going to factor that out first. I now have an a term of 3 and a c term of negative 4. When I multiply those together, I get negative 12. Thinking of negative 12, what factors of negative 12 make up a negative 1? That's correct, a positive 3, negative 4. So I rewrite my negative 1x, my b term, as positive 3x minus 4x. And then I'm going to find the greatest common factor of each of these parts. Finally, I use a distributive property until I have the factors of my trinomial. Bring any questions you have with you, and I'll see you in class tomorrow.